Hello, it's Rick, your bike fitness coach again, back for another 3 videos. Part one, which will be on background, part two on baselines, and part three is the surprising results. What I put this list together for, this is about chains and lubes. Right now, this is 4/27, April 27th. There's a little internet battle going on right now between Durian Rider and a chain lube company about the validity of the results of some of the claims made by the chain lube company. They've come up with a lube, a wax-based lube. They soak the chain in it and are selling it for literally hundreds of dollars for a chain. So there's a big battle going back and forth of the validity. Anyway, I wanted to share my story back several years ago when Shimano used outside testers. And if you remember, Vela News kind of messed that up by announcing the Dura Ace product, the 11-speed product, before Shimano allowed them to, and they kind of cut off all testers at that point in time, all outside testers. Well, I did 4 years of chain testing for Shimano, and I'll show you the results here. I'll go through my background a little bit first. Got a couple of stories there. And in video 2, some baseline testing. And video 3 will be the surprising results. I think you'll like to stick around for at least 3. It's not going to be what you're going to think the results were. Part 1, my background, what I've been working on. How I got into testing, kind of an interesting story. When my daughter was young in elementary school, they used to get together once a month to get the moms and dads involved. They used to have a muffins for Mom's Day and a donuts for Dad's Day. They had muffins and or donuts, coffee to get the parents into the school. It was a private school. And to get the parents more involved with what the kids are doing, meet the teachers, meet the principals, etc. One of the first days I went there, my daughter was walking around talking to her friends, and then she came back to me. I noticed there was a gentleman that was surrounded by about 25 people. So she goes, Dad, we're about ready to go to class, but before we do, you got to go talk to that guy over there. She knew I was into cycling. I was doing some racing at the time. I was a Cat 3. She said, you got to talk to that guy. I go, well, who is it? She goes, that's Kozo. I said, Kozo? Yes, Kozo Shimano. So I said, okay. So as I went over there, his little entourage died down to about 10 people. I wanted to introduce myself. It turned out one of his daughters was in the grade ahead of my daughter, and one of the other daughter, the younger daughter, was in the grade behind my daughter. So I introduced myself and showed her who my daughter was, told her I was into cycling and this and that. And he goes, oh, he was all excited that he says, come on down and meet us. And if you're interested in a Dura Ace, hey, we'll get you a friendship price. So I'm not even going to tell you what I paid for it. So the whole kit and caboodle was a 7,800 Dura Ace, if I remember right. Invited down there, talked to a bunch of people. Really nice time. At about the same time, a local bike shop owner that I used to ride weekend group rides with introduced me to one of his friends that lived just down the street from him. We did some riding. It turned out to be Wayne Stetna. We did some rides together. We did some testing together. And, Wayne's still a good friend of mine today, even though he's working for SRAM now, not Shimano. My opinion, great guy, really knows his stuff. On some of the rides I used to go with him, in fact, on one ride, I was asking him, chain deflection, is it better to have a 3x9 or like a 2x10 when you consider chain deflection. And he was actually listing in his mind, he was listing out the angles of chain deflection for each gear on the 3x9. You know, this guy knew bicycles inside and out. Amazing amount of knowledge this guy had. That's how I kind of got into Shimano, got into testing for them, and was my start into the bicycle industry. As a tester, I had a pair of 7,800 wheels. On a ride one time, I talked to Wayne and said, okay, where is the drive side on the bike? Where is all the force when you apply power to the pedal? It's going through the chain rings, through the chain, into the cassette. And it seems to me that if you have a radial on the right side and a crossed on the left side, it seems to be backwards to me. Why wouldn't? Because when you're twisting the cassette, you're deflecting the spokes, and the spokes are absorbing some of the energy that should be going into the ground. So he thought about it, and several months later, he called me over to the shop and he gave me a set of wheels. It was a 7850, and if you noticed, they crossed the spokes on both sides. So Shimano is a company that, if it makes sense for them, it's going to make the product better. They'll listen to you. So one of my requests to them was to fix the Dura-Ace wheel, and they actually did. So they built a 7850, which was probably one of the best wheels that they had built, and still, in my opinion, as of that time. I also, as a bike fitter, I'm seeing a lot of people that come in, and the Americans, compared to the Europeans and the Asians, we're bigger, thicker, wider, taller, heavier, and we tend to have our hips out here and our feet down here, and when we pedal like this. So instead of putting wedges in, why not just do the simple thing about widening the platform, getting the feet under the hips, and now you're pedaling like this. The problem really is the bottom bracket shell on the bikes. They're too narrow. They're built for kind of a Euro spec / Asian spec, not an American spec. So they're too narrow for most Americans. So I said, hey, I'm putting pedal washers on some people, and you can only put so many pedal washers on until you don't have enough threads to hold the pedal onto the crank arm. So you can only put maybe 2 millimeters most of pedal washers on. Why not just create a new longer axle? So this is where the 4 millimeter, the +4, as Shimano calls it, on the Ultegra pedal came from. I told Wayne and said, hey, you need to address more of the American people, so create a second pedal with a longer shaft on it, a longer axle, and good to go. Well, there it is. I also told them, you know, another thing that happens is most of the cranks are way too long for most people riding a bike. Where did this 175 / 172.5 standard come from? Well, the response I get was, well, that's the way we've always done it. Why would we change? Well, I just explained, well, why you would change now? You got the physiologists involved and the biomechanics and a kinesiologist that say those are too long because of knee range of motion, knee flexion, shear and compressive forces on the patellofemoral head are excessive, are extreme, people destroying their knees. The European pros are quitting at 26 years old with destroyed knees. So why not just put the right crank arms? Well, then they said, well, we don't really want to change a Dura-Ace. That's for our pro level people. The Ultegra is for the club racers, and they want the longer cranks. We'll kind of dip our toe in the water and build a 160 for the 105. Well, now there's a 160 and the 105, the Ultegra and the Dura-Ace. So they're in the right direction. I still think they should go shorter, down in at least to 150. They should offer a 155 and a 150. That would be, just do it in the 105 if you don't want to be on the leading edge with the pro level stuff. A 105 it's a good group set. Go with a 155 and a 160, add that to it. So at least they listened. I was also doing some Shimano testing for Di2. When they came out with the first mix, remember the first Dura-Ace was non-upgradable. The second one, they came out with, they didn't change some of the software. So as people were upgrading their Dura-Ace system by maybe adding a cheaper Ultegra front derailleur or rear derailleur, the programming locked up. Well, it was incompatible because the software program still thought the Dura-Ace was the old non-programmable one, and of course you can't mix and match anything with that. So they fixed the software. They sent me a full Ultegra group set and a full Dura-Ace group set, and they told me what we want you to do is to run an Ultegra lever with the Dura-Ace front derailleur and a Dura-Ace lever with the Ultegra rear derailleur. And we want you to test to see if you can actually program that, if the programmer will work and make sure that everything works fine. It detects everything. So the first thing when you go through the programming, it goes through and detects to see if what parts you have, and then it does another check to see if you have the most uploaded and updated firmware. And if you don't, then you can program it. So this was kind of a by scratch. Well, I needed a bike. I had the Cervelo R5CA, and I worked with our local guy, Don, who actually built the bike. Took it to him, and we drilled some holes in the frame and ran all the cables. And to this date, it's still working fine. The bike, I still have some of the mix and match parts, even though I've upgraded it since then. But so far, everything's worked fine on the Shimano Di2, programming the firmware for the new parts. Haven't had any issues since. Also, that 7850 wheel that they gave me, I put in silicon nitride ceramic balls. Remember, the Shimano is a cup and cone, so you can put ceramic balls in. I rode those wheels along with a friend. I sent him the wheels. He rode them a little bit. We had roughly 25,000 miles on those Dura-Ace wheels. Never had one spoke go out of true, never had one spoke break. The balls worked great in the hubs. The only thing that was worn out was rim cupping. So every time you press the rim brakes, you take a little bit of material off of the edge of the rims, and eventually the rims are cupped like this. And there's little wear indicators, little holes drilled into the outside of the rims. Once those disappear, then the rims are shot. We sent them back to Shimano. They took them apart, and they couldn't believe that the hubs were still in great shape. The rims were gone, but just to show them that they had originally said that the ceramic balls would never work in those hubs. We proved them wrong, said if you want to eventually go with ceramic balls on an upgraded Dura-Ace wheel, whatever material you're using works fine. You can get 25,000 miles out of a set of wheels. They work fine. So they have that information if they ever want to add ceramic balls to their Dura-Ace wheels. So while I was doing this, I started looking at chains. I was doing 10-speed Dura-Ace chains, and back then they were affordable. Chains were affordable. I had the Park chain tool tester, the CC2, and noticed that if I pulled a chain out of the box, put it on the bike, some of the Dura-Ace chains were 25% indicated worn, and some right out of the box were indicated 75% worn. So there was a lot of mix and match on what the quality of the chains were. When I got a good chain, measured the 10-speed chain life, I got about 1,800 to maybe 2,500 miles pushing it until the chain was completely shot. So after about 4 years of testing, what Shimano initially wanted me to test was 11-speed chains on 10-speed group sets. How well did that work? So I set up a new Ultegra. They gave me some Ultegra chain, the 6800s. They also gave me some Ultegra cassettes, and they gave me some lubes to use, which I'll show you later on. I used one lube for the entire test of each chain, applied the lube approximately every 200 miles, and recorded the wear at each interval. From there, measured the Ultegra cassette. Every one was 1128. I cleaned the chains. Each chain I cleaned with Clorox wipes. Rode the chain, high mileage, hills, FTP tests, etc. Put a lot of power through them. About the same time, I started watching a video where a company was testing chains and lubes. That was the one we talked about. That I think it was Friction Facts. Some of the issues, the bad data that I saw was from their testing machine. It was constant pressure on the chain. If you remember back then, they were using a paraffin-based mixed with Teflon or PTFFA. Yeah, more of a Teflon coating powder that would mixed in with the paraffin. Not real life testing, being that constant pressure on a chain. As you know, if you're racing, you're putting out 1,000 watts and then coasting, 1,000 watts and coasting. You're putting a lot of pressure and wear on the pins of the chains. Also, there was so this tester that they had was a constant 100 watts or 200 watts, whatever it was, not putting a lot of that stress, trying to pull that chain apart, putting a lot of high power. There was also no deflection. They had one gear in the back and they ran it at one speed with one gear. There was no deflection testing. So deflection, what I had found out using paraffin is that when you start crossing the chain, the links will basically shear off any wax paraffin in between the links, and then you have dry chain. So that was a little bit questionable as to what they were trying to actually test, except for what it appeared to be they were trying to sell their own little, I think what Durian Rider is saying now, they're either their own chains or their own pre-lubed paraffin solution, which in my opinion does not work that well because of the shearing effect of a cross chain. Anytime you shift gears, it's going to clean out and going to shear away the paraffin between the links. So basically, let's talk really quickly about what a worn chain is and how a chain gets worn. If you look at this picture here, what wears on a chain are the pins. You see the grooves cut into the pin. And if you imagine, the next link over has grooves cut in. So each of the grooves cut into the pin, if you take the distance there, that's what makes the chain pull apart and pull apart until it's stretched, what they call stretched. Stretched means a worn pin. So the area between A and B, as you see, will increase to the point where the manufacturers say, hey, you're worn out completely. A new chain is needed. That's what's worn on a chain. So with that, we're going to end video 1. And in a few days or so, we'll put video 2 up, and we'll talk about the baseline that I did on testing. Hopefully you like the background, which will lead into part 2 and part 3. We'll see you in the next video.